we'll come back to. But right now, we are going to be getting our big diagnosis brains on here. All right, so you made it to Unit 8. We're going to do HVAC diagnosis. Now, that's something that's a little hard to do as a lecture. A lot of this really needs to be you doing diagnosis, but I'm going to get you kind of warmed up on some of the things you may see, get your brain in the right place a little bit, you know what I'm saying? And then the part 2 is actually going to be you going on the simulator and doing the diagnosis. And then the extension of part 2 is a recording of my answers for the diagnosis and how I think through them, how I look at it, you know, the type of things I would use to come up with that diagnosis. Okay. So here we go. All right. Let's say that you're working on a modern vehicle. Everything we're going to focus on is going to be pretty modern. You all know that these systems set codes, whether it's a temperature sensor or, for example, maybe a solar sensor circuit or something. A lot of these electrical components do have DTCs, right? Because the HVAC ECU is monitoring all these circuits, and not just the circuit, but also the sensor and how it acts. So if it acts in a way that's implausible or not plausible, you know, it can set like a performance code. But if it's in the circuit, like for example, maybe this solar sensor, they're expecting a 0.5 volts to a 4.5 volts. If it's outside of that range, it'll actually set a circuit code. Now this happens to have two circuits, two solar sensors, passenger side, driver side. They're both current, right? So you guys should be overall familiar. A current code means it's happening now. A pending code means it may or may not be happening now, but what's for sure is it's set the fault one time, but it has to set the fault 2 times to become current. So some DTCs on the first fail, boom, it's live, it's active, it's current. Some codes are 2-trip, which means like if the solar sensor was a 2-trip, it would have to set the code once and then it'd have to set the code again to become current. Okay. That's what pending means. It's pending. It's failed once, but it hasn't failed twice yet. It's pending. All right. And then history would mean it failed, but the most recent test it passed. And it'll remain in history a certain number of starts, a lot of times 40. So it has to run that test 40 times for it to be erased from memory. Then it won't be history. It'll just be gone. It'll be done. All right. So that's a little bit about DTCs. Then from DTCs, you guys know you would go with, you know, look up the service information, follow the DTC, follow the steps, follow the checks. There's going to be a type of a flow chart, and you don't just replace the part that's mentioned in the code. Okay. So I can't stress that enough. If you're going to do diagnosis, yes, you need to check for codes. Yes, you need to record the codes, but then yes, you need to plug those into TIS, all data, whatever, learn about the system, and then follow the steps and do your actual diagnosis. Okay. Sometimes what that looks like is going under data list, live data. They have different terms, right? But if let's say we were after the room temperature sensor, you could go in and look at the live reading. It's 76.55 degrees. And if you approximate that, you know, the actual inside temperature is 76.55, you'd be like, well, wait a minute. There's no issue right now, right? So you're going to look at it, see which way it's skewed, see if it's off. If that, for example, let's test your memory to when we covered the computerization and electronics. If that reading 76.55 was a -40, what would your thoughts be? Anybody? Nothing? Something? Anything? -40.
An open.
Bingo. That's how you diagnose it, man. So if you read a -40, you're like, hey, it's open. Now the open could be in the wire. The open could be in the sensor. The open could be in the ECU, right? But at that point, you know, like, all right, I got to open. Now you're just tracking down the open. You could check an open with your meter, checking voltage. You could check an open with your meter, checking resistance or continuity, right? Like we could, you guys know how to diagnose opens, but you have to get to the point where you know you're diagnosing an open with the room temperature sensor, the ambient temperature sensor, evaporator, it's engine coolant, et cetera, right? So looking in the live data can sometimes just tell you what the status is, right? And then of course, in other cases, like if you had to go to terminals of the ECU, it would tell you what the range is, what it should be reading, what terminal should have what voltage. Okay, so that's how we get a little more in detail. Like a thermistor, for example, if this was the ambient temperature sensor, we would go in and we'd actually get a range at this specific temperature. What should the resistance be, right? And then we would use our meter on ohms to determine if it's good or bad. But we wouldn't just jump to that. You understand? We'd only really be at that if probably we had a code, or maybe if the symptoms matched with a bad thermistor, but it's not so bad where it's an open, it might just be skewed, right? So just having an overall view. Solar sensor, again, we can jump up in there and we can look at the solar sensor readings. And then this one is going to be this one's going to be a little bit of a bonus. Okay. I've asked many groups this before, and it's always very hard to get a straight answer. But if we were to try to go and test this, I'm going to give you the best practice, and then I'm going to give you a couple different other options. If we look at this reading, it's going to have a value, right? How could we tell if the sensor's working or not? We got a value of 87 and 97, driver side, passenger side. How could we tell if the sensor is any good?
If you cover it with your hand, would the reading change?
Yes, exactly. Or how could we, if it was inside the shop, couldn't we pull it outside and have it all of a sudden change a lot? Yeah, I would hope
Yes.
so. I would hope so. So that's the best practice, right? We're going to use the actual sunlight. And then the other thing is, don't you think that we could use a certain type of flashlight? Think that would be helpful?
Would the UV be a lot better than regular?
Well, and this is the part that's tricky. Okay. So we may have to do an experiment. How about testing photodiode lamp type? Interesting. We're going to test this, testing a photodiode, put it on a meter, shine a light on it. Now, what type of light did this specify? It didn't really, it just said a light. Huh. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. How do you test it? That didn't really give us much of an answer. Laser diode. Let's see. Okay. And this one's a tricky one. You can use a light meter or a flashlight. But it just says flashlight. I don't know what type of flashlight we should use. Anybody think they know? A flashlight that simulates the effect of sunlight.
I mean, or are you talking about like ones that have like was natural color?
Yes, it should be as similar to the sun as possible. So some would say LED, but I'm not so sure that an LED will work.
I know Milwaukee has the true color lights.
Interesting. So this one, I'm going to give you guys a chance to make a nice, give you some extra credit, give you a little bonus. When we go to test this type of sensor, sometimes it's specific on what type of light it is, and sometimes it's not. Oh, you know what? I am not in Chrome. Let's see if this will work. I didn't realize I'm in something else. I want to use my typical Chrome. It's okay because I'm already logged in. Oh, I must have logged out of TIS. It's okay. So let's go with, let's see what TIS says. You want to test the solar sensor, do you? So let's go TIS. I guess we'll make it any model. And then what we're going to do, we're going to cheat. We're going to go here. I'm going to come pull this back up on the screen. We had a DTC of B1421. Okay, let's keep that in our mind. B1421. Not under QTG. See, I was doing break stuff earlier. B1421. Now, this is going to be like for basically any, there's going to be so many documents found because I didn't put in the year, make, model. So let's go with something a little earlier if possible. Let's go with last. Oh, not a 2005 CF. Fine. They probably changed the DTCs on that. So this may or may not work, but let's see. There's the chart. Solar sensor circuit. In a shocking turn of events, it's so old, it's old school PDF. Oh, where'd it go? Did it freak out? Okay, let's zoom out. Okay, here we go. Has you do some resistance tests. So if you want to do a resistance test, it's calling out, look what it calls for. These couple terminals. I can usually zoom, I for some reason can't. I don't know if you guys can see, but that's terminal 4 and 6. All right, so it's calling out connector B6, terminal 4 and 6. All right, that makes sense. So we're going to do those, and it's just going to say it should have 10 to 14 volts. Okay. And this one's really more for the light control sensor. Then it's going to say, remove automatic light control sensor, apply battery voltage between terminals A25, 6 and 3. So I believe that's just giving them those sensors need battery voltage to power up. So we're just going to basically power it up. And then terminal 25, 2 and 25, 3. So 2 and 3, TSR and CLTE should read 4 to 6 volts when it's subjected to electric light. So this isn't really specifying. Then it says when you cover the sensor with a cloth, what should we get? Below 0.8, right? So depending on what we do, if we shine the flashlight or if we cover it with a cloth, that voltage should be 4 to 4.6 or below 4.8. So it's pretty typical. Like with no light, it's going to be low volts, and with a lot of light, it's going to be high volts. Okay, that's the main thing. Now, what does this say? Use and I'll say what now? What's that word? Incandescent. This is an LED. This is not going to cut it. I'm sorry. Incandescent. Honestly, I don't have an incandescent light. I literally don't. I don't have an incandescent flashlight. Do you know what an incandescent flashlight looks like? I'll show it to you. It's fun. But LED is not going to really represent the sun. It doesn't work the same as sun. So I'm going to jump out of here because this gave us some really good insight. Now, if I go here, I'm going to bail on, we might keep TIS open actually. Incandescent shop light. Well, I'll do actually a work light because that's looking like the shop lights that are above, right? Now that's okay if that's what the shop has. Some like this. This is the old school one I was thinking about. Have you guys ever seen this in the old school shop? That's what you're supposed to use. It's not your Streamlight. It's not your Matco Stinger. It's not your whatever. It's not your Amazon LED. An LED is not the appropriate type of light to use. Cool. Incandescent. That's like the old school bulb. Make sense? And not only that, it's not even a CFL bulb. If you know what a CFL bulb, that's like the Christmas tree, the ice cream cone looking light. That's not what you're supposed to use. You're supposed to use incandescent light bulbs, which I'm surprised you can even get anymore. Like this, like this. Actually, that might be LED. Yeah, see, that's a vintage LED. This is an actual incandescent that had the filament that would glow. Cool. That's what you're supposed to use to test these. Now, if anybody wants some extra credit and you want to write up exactly why, that would be great. I'll give you extra credit. In the meantime, now you have a little bit of a better idea how to test that solar sensor. Cool. And the other cool thing is you can probably get a count number and then you can shine the light and have it go one way and then cover it with a cloth and have it go the other way. You don't necessarily have to bust the meter out right off the bat. Use the live data to your benefit. So if you cover it up with a towel, you're probably going to get this 2 number. And if you have a light on it, you're probably going to get these upper 80, 90s, something like that. Cool. And again, when we're getting into servo motors, just so you guys know, if you wanted to actually test the motor, you could jump power to them, 12 volts in ground, and see if it moves. If you think it's a bad motor on the servo, it's okay. You're getting it right from service info. You can actually jump those to see if they move. Right. But it probably makes more sense to go in and active test. So whatever output, right? We talked about just inputs. If you want to test inputs, you're going to use probably live data and your meter. If you want to test outputs, you're probably going to use jumper or active tests on there. So let's say you wanted to control the blower motor. You thought the blower motor wasn't working, command it on with the scan tool, see if it gets 12 volts in ground. If it's a magnetic clutch relay, you don't think it's working, command it on. Command it on, and that way you can either see it does work, or if it doesn't work, make sure it's getting 12 volts in ground to the clutch, right? So active test is going to be very helpful. Defogger, air mix, you can move both ways. Inlet damper, that's recirculation or fresh air, right? You can active test these components to see if they work. Cool. Remember those, well, quite a few of these, like temperature actuator, mode door actuator, fresh air versus recirc actuator. They also have sensors, right? So if you wanted to check the sensor reading, that's when you go back to live data and you can actually see the position. A lot of times it'll show you a number. Air mix servo, its target is 85. And then a lot of times it'll show you the actual. Okay, makes sense. And then let's say it's on the control panel where you select your temperature, you can see what the actual selected temperature is. So maybe if you're pressing the up button and it doesn't seem to work, press the up button, see if it changes the 70 set number, the set temperature. Cool. A lot of stuff you can test through all data and active test. Make sense? Now, let's get more into actual AC diagnosis. If we were to look at this one, have a look. Interesting. This has poor or no cooling. What do you think about these pressures? The low side is 8. The high side is 100. Anybody got any thoughts? You can put them in the chat too if you want.
The high side isn't high enough.
True. The high side, shouldn't that be up here around 200?
Yeah. And the low, shouldn't it be near 0?
No, the low shouldn't be 0. The low should be more like 25 to 35. And it depends on the ambient, right? So I see some different answers in there. I want to define this, okay? The low is too low and the high is too low. So I saw one of the answers, maybe a compressor. I want you to remember the compressor does build the high. So if the compressor is weak, you're right. The high would be too low. I agree. However, if the compressor is weak, the compressor draws the low down. If you were to go out to the car and just slap your gauges on this car and not even start it on a day like today, if it's 80 degrees outside, you'll probably have 90 and 90. If you have 90 PSI and 90 PSI and your compressor's weak, how the heck did this get so low? If your compressor's weak, it'll be closer to 90, 90, maybe to be 100 and on the high and 80 on the low, right? Your compressor pushes the high, high, but it also draws the low, low. And the compressor isn't drawing it's not, the compressor's not lazy. Like if the compressor's lazy, they're both kind of similar, right? Both of these are low. Both of these are low, and one person did get it.
I would say it's low refrigerant as well.
Bada bing, bada boom, which we call undercharged, low refrigerant. Yeah, exactly. Nice. All right, another one. Look at this. Ooh, interesting. I'm showing about I don't know, 75 and about I don't know, 75. No cooling. Thoughts? Ideas? And we can talk about this too. So like, do you have anything else that you check? Don't even tell me what your guess is. Tell me, what would you look for?
Would you check the temperature on the hoses, like how they feel?
Sure. And they feel the same. You know how I know? Because the pressures are the same. So if this is 75 and this is 75, they're both going to feel the same. If the pressures are the same, the temperatures are the same. So sure. Yep. Looks good. Any other checks we can do, or you want to start throwing parts at this? Bust out the parts cannon. Oh, I like that. I saw that come through the chat. Check to see if the AC clutch engages. And I look down there and you know what? Nothing. Nothing. So then what would you do? Well, for now, let's just say you're right. The AC compressor clutch is the compressor's in op. Now that could be a compressor clutch, that could be a relay, that could be an open wire, that could be a blown fuse, that could even be on a variable displacement compressor, that could be a problem with the solenoid, that could be a DTC that causes the HVAC ECU to not command the compressor. Okay. That could even be a temperature sensor or switch, a pressure sensor or switch. Like there could be a lot of stuff that would cause the AC compressor to not engage, whether it's solenoid for variable displacement or whether it's compressor clutch, right? So remember one of the earlier things I showed is like, look down there at that compressor. If that compressor's not on, you figure out why that compressor's not on. You don't start selling stuff. Cool. All right, here we go. Now this is what this is trying to show. This is showing this needle's bouncing at about 75 and this needle's bouncing at about 75, but they're not going slow. They're like this. They're fluttering, 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 fluttering. Any ideas? Anything you want to check? What are your thoughts? Think back to the lesson on compressors. Talked a lot about compressors. Oh, and by the way, you guys, I forgot when you guys were doing the HVAC boxes last week, I forgot to bust out the compressors so you could take them apart. But we'll do it this week. What if the compressor had a damaged valve, right? Remember those little poppet valves or they're reed valves? When the compressor pulls in, it opens the intake valve. When the compressor pushes out, it needs to close the intake valve and open the exhaust valve. But if the valve's broken, it'll suck refrigerant in the inlet and it'll push it back out the inlet and suck it in the inlet and push it back out the inlet. And you'll end up with a needle pulse. Remember how they were fluttering? That's every time the piston strokes. Pushing refrigerant out, pushing refrigerant in, pushing refrigerant out, pulling refrigerant in, push, pull, push, pull. That fluctuation, it's not a electronic issue. That clutch has a bad valve, or that compressor has a bad valve. Damaged compressor valve. Oh yeah. Ooh, this one was interesting. We had a really similar one with Chris's mom's Camry. We got a vehicle, you fired up, you got 200 on the high, 220, maybe 215 on the high, 28 on the low, but then all of a sudden, boom, it's -10 and 100. but then all of a sudden, and the AC starts to blow warm, but then all of a sudden it goes back to 200 and to 30. Also, if you remember the story about Billy Bob's and the dog and the cat and the kids and everybody, and what do you think could be happening there?
This is the buildup on the evaporator.
This is I gave two versions of that story. This is the internal one. So
Um,
the reason that the reason I know it's internal is because look, your low side should never be sucked into a vacuum unless there's a restriction. Now the restriction was a good point, but because if it's restricted, your low side, the compressor is going to be trying to suck the refrigerant out of the low, but it's frozen, but it's restricted. So it's literally, it's like trying to suck the milkshake through the straw, except the milkshake's too thick, right? That's what this is like. So if that's the case, that would make the negative number because it's drawn into a vacuum. However, why was the high really good and now the high is low? I thought if there was a restriction, the high would spike too high. And the truth is it would for a short time. It would spike too high, but then the thing is, remember, the only reason it's high is because it's got a supply of refrigerant on the low side. Once the compressor's starving for refrigerant, it's not going to be able to build the high that high. It's actually going to be low. It's going to be extremely low and negative on the low, and the high is going to start off really high, but then it's going to end up too low because it just doesn't have enough refrigerant entering the compressor due to the restriction. But now this is the weird thing. Once it gets like that, the AC blows warm, and then all of a sudden it clears up and it starts working again. Remember that story? Billy Bob's driving the whole, you took your kids on the vacation in the station wagon. I don't know. This kind of sounds like some Ratzeni would do. So let's make it a van. The van. Take the kids on the trip with the van. You got the kids, all five of them, the cat and the dog and everybody, right? And everybody's happy with the AC. And then the further you go, all of a sudden, the AC, in this case, blows full air, but it blows warm. So you stop in at that shop. Ready? Billy Bob's bait, tackle, and auto repair. And he's like, hey, you want to buy some night crawlers? You can go fishing. And you're like, no, I saw it said auto repair. Can you fix my AC? And he's like, oh yeah, I can fix that AC. Let me have a look at that. But give me a minute, I got to change. And so goes and changes his uniform to an automotive uniform, like a mechanic, if you will. By the time he gets out there and fires it up, AC's working good. So, ain't nothing wrong with this AC. So you leave 20 minutes later, AC's back to blowing warm. Full airflow though. So the evaporator freezing over externally, cool idea. But that would make a low airflow volume. And I did tell you that story in that version, but this version is a little bit different. This has full airflow. This is actually moisture in the system. It hits the TXV. The TXV freezes the moisture. There should not be moisture in there, but it's freezing. That makes a restriction. That means the compressor is going to try to draw against that restriction, suck it down into the negative. And then your positive is going to starve for refrigerant, and that's going to pull it down into the 100 range. And you're not going to get the correct evaporation in the evaporator. You're not going to get the correct condensation in the condenser, and it's going to blow warm. But the thing is, when it blows warm, that actually equalizes the pressures and it warms up. The evaporator actually warms up, and it thaws the frozen TXV, and it starts to work again. And then it doesn't work, and then it does work, and it doesn't work. And probably Billy Bob's not going to get it. You're probably going to need to take it someplace who's maybe ASE certificated ASE mechanic there. So that's my goal for you. Okay. Fun one. The key was how this one drops off to the negative. That was the clue. And then how it brings itself back up. That's the thawing. Okay. Another one. Poor cooling on hot days. Oh, any observations? This could actually be several things. How would you summarize these gauges? Both pressures are high. So what's your first answer? Pressure's too high, could be overcharged. Absolutely. And that's the most simple answer. Especially on hot days, if it's overcharged, the pressures are higher when it's hotter. And you may get a pressure that's over on both high and low, and that's going to affect your evaporation, your condensation. But additionally, sometimes you got a pressure temperature switch or sensor, and it'll see that really high pressure, and it'll just be like, you know what? Cut the clutch. There's too much pressure in here. Turn off the compressor. And trust me, it's going to blow warm on a hot day. But that's not the only possibility. It could also be high pressures because of high temperatures. That makes sense? How could the temperature be high in the system? What should manage the heat? What should get rid of the heat?
The evaporator not working.
The evaporator works to get rid of the heat from the cabin, but it absorbs heat into the system. What's going to get rid of heat out of the system?
Oh, the condenser.
The condenser does it, and what helps remove it from that general area? Yeah, you guys are getting it in the chat. So the condenser, absolutely, and the cooling fan, we need to really look at those both very well. If the condenser is full of junk, it's not going to get a lot of airflow. It's not going to be able to get rid of a lot of heat. If the cooling fan is in op, it's not going to get airflow. And even if the condenser is in good shape, the cooling fan's not going to help it get rid of its heat. And that heat is going to be visualized in the form of high pressure, high temperature, high pressure, right? And if you got a lot of heat left over, that heat is going to pass through into the back end of the low side, and your low is going to be high and your high is going to be high. And so it could be both. Now there's one more thing it could be. Notice this, air in the system, and I'd like to simplify this for you. Air in the system is kind of like air in tires. When it's air in tires, when it's cold out, the pressure's low. When it's warm out, the pressure's high, right? That makes sense. Like when you get your tires warm, the pressure goes up. Refrigerant, it doesn't do that in the same way air does. So if you have air in the system, a lot of times you'll get these random points where the moisture, the air has moisture. Okay. That's the main issue. The air has moisture. The gases that are in the air, atmospheric air, are more erratic with temperature, right? So if it's moisture and it's condensing into liquid, but then it's boiling, that's going to expand, right? That's going to give you a pressure pulse. If you were to have a vehicle that were to, let's say, like have these not fluttering like a compressor valve, but kind of like all of a sudden like psh, psh, like that would more probably be air is moving into the high side and it's boiling it into a gas, and that gas expansion makes a big pressure boost. It might even, how I was doing psh, like a blow off valve. It might even do that. Remember on our compressors, we have that pressure relief valve. That moisture and air in that system may actually kick that pressure relief valve. That'd be like a pop off. And when it does, it's not just air that's going to come out. Actual refrigerant, oil, and dye, maybe if we have dye, that's going to come out with the air. And it's going to do that until enough of the air gets out that it no longer goes. Psh. So let's say that this vehicle were to have these types of numbers, but it were to have oily dye all over the compressor near that relief valve, I would diagnose that as probably air, right? Because the air came out and now it's normal. Cool. So that leak wasn't a leak. It was on purpose. It's a blow off valve, right? There you are in your turbo car and you go to shift and you close the throttle real quick. Your turbo's still spooled up. The turbine and impeller are cranking and you just close the throttle valve. Where the heck is all that boost that it's making going to go? Well, it's going to go out your blow off valve. You like those sounds. I know. So I hear you make them sometimes. But basically the blow off valve in AC system would be the pressure relief valve because of too much air pressure. Okay. Yeah, that's right. No comment. All right. Now we're going to get into some diagnostic exercises. All right. So this is just going to be more like a discussion. Okay. You guys are going to diagnose these AC problems on the simulator. I'm going to give you some faults, right? But I can't stress enough how much of the A7 is diagnosis. So I'm going to walk you through some potential failures. All right. So the first one, number one, is insufficient cooling on hot days. All right, cool. Let's go. Diagnostic steps. You did a performance test. The test showed the vent temperature is warmer than expected. Then you went and you checked the pressures. How would you check the pressures?
Put up the gauges.
Yeah, so my gauges are over there. How are you going to do it at the dealership? Well, it's okay if you use the machine just for the gauges. It's all right if you roll the machine over and you're like, well, I'm not going to recover it. I'm just going to check the pressures using the gauges. That's legit. That's fine. So you put the gauges on there and the high side and the low side are higher than expected. Do you see how that would lead you to know the system's overcharged? Right? Make sense? The high side is high and the low side is high. That's overcharged. Enough. All right. Second one, front AC is okay. But when you start running the rear AC, it starts to blow warmer. What are your thoughts? What would you even do? I mean, I know you'd verify it, but what are your thoughts? You want to check for codes? You want
Didn't
to,
you say if it has a secondary rear, you would check like was it another evaporator?
true. Kind of my thought on this though is like the AC seems to blow cool. But remember, if you add the rear AC, now the refrigerant's got to go back to that rear evaporator and do the work there too. So yeah, I'd probably say check pressures. And well, what if you check the pressures and both the high side and the low side were lower than expected? Yeah, undercharged. So here's why though. When you're asking that refrigerant to just go to one evaporator, it's going to send all the refrigerant to that front evaporator and it's probably undercharged still, but like when it's doing a lot of cooling, it's evaporating all that refrigerant. As long as you have most of a charge, that evaporation is enough to grab all the heat you need. Once it starts to get like really low, all the refrigerant, refrigerant will evaporate before it's out of the evaporator and it will no longer absorb heat. And that's when it'll start to blow warm. But the thing is on a front rear unit, if you do front and rear, that TXV will start to allow refrigerant to flow. Now you're splitting half your refrigerant for the front, half of it for the back. Half of that refrigerant is going to evaporate before it's even through the front evaporator. And the rear one, half of that refrigerant is going to evaporate before it's even through the rear evaporator. Both of those evaporators are going to have a hard time absorbing as much heat as they can because the system's undercharged, right? So you're adding load to the system. That even happens on the front one too. If you're running low on refrigerant, it evaporates, it flows in the passenger side and it evaporates as it's going to the driver's side. If you're low on refrigerant, a lot of times your passenger side will blow really cold and your driver's side will start to blow a little bit warm. That's a really good indication that it's probably low. Now that's totally different than a dual zone where it has the left side actuator stuck in heat and the right side is working on AC. Okay. I'm not saying like one's blowing 120 and one's blowing 40. I'm more saying like the right side may be blowing 55 and the left side's blowing 65. You can feel that, but it's due to undercharge. Okay. This one is undercharged too. Cool. All right. Next one, insufficient cooling at times. Like what type of times? We need to really verify it, right? So let's say you did a performance test. Vent temperature is warmer than expected. Both the high side and the low side are higher. Ooh, interesting. Remember, we kind of got one of those as a preview. If the high is high and the low is high, it could be overcharged, right? But if you were to put gauges on there, you have multiple possibilities still. I would say check the cooling fan, right? And it can't get rid of the heat. That's right. If it can't get rid of the heat, it can't get rid of the pressure. And the pressures are too high and the heat's too high. And so if we had a cooling fan inoperative, that would cause high pressures. And if the pressures get too high, it'll shut the compressor clutch off as a safety measure, high pressure cutoff. Cool. How about no cooling at all? AC doesn't cool at all. What are your thoughts? What would you do? AC blows full blown ambient.
Physically check the lines. If the AC is even operating, check the clutch.
Yeah, I would really agree with the compressor. I'd be like, hey, let me see if the compressor is doing anything. Because if it's providing no cooling, you know, there's no pressure difference. If there's no cooling, there's no pressure difference. If there's no pressure difference, I want to know what's up with the compressor. Now, if the compressor's not kicking on, list some of the possibilities.
It's like the one I had of my group with that cord, the relay, the fuse, the
Okay,
power
so it
compressor itself.
wasn't getting 12 volts at the clutch. I agree.
Hmm.
That could be wires, fuse, relay. That could be a bunch of stuff. I agree. Anybody else got some other ideas why the compressor clutch may not be kicking on? If it's got low refrigerant, the low side cutoff or the pressure sensor is going to be like, hey, refrigerant pressure's too low. Don't run the clutch. And it's going to do that to protect itself. So you would go ahead and check it out. Compressor's not engaging, just like what we talked about. Why though? Tough to say. All right, how about this? AC is in op and the light is blinking. That actually tells you much more than you realize. The light blinking is critical. Anybody think they know what the light blinking means? The light blinking means there's a problem in the compressor clutch circuit. Check DTCs, check to see if the circuit's open. For example, if you disconnect your compressor all the electrically, a lot of times you'll press the AC button and it'll just flash. It'll just blink. They do a lot of times monitor. The computer will monitor the compressor clutch circuit. All right. So if the AC light's blinking, you pretty much know it's some in the compressor clutch circuit. Cool. All right. So check this out. Did a performance test. It's warmer. High and low side are about the same. Oof. So it's ambient. That compressor's not working. Check the tech stream to verify refrigerant control current. So that's like saying, well, a couple things. One, you could check the refrigerant pressure sensor, but then additionally, sometimes you can look at the solenoid that controls the variable displacement compressor, right? So you're going to check into both of those and then unfortunately have to look into the clutch. Maybe the clutch is damaged. Maybe the circuit is damaged. Maybe who the heck, something like that. Who knows? All right, here's another one. Insufficient cooling on the driver's side. Ooh, interesting. What are your thoughts?
Can we go back to what you were saying, whereas with low refrigerant, whereas it just gets cooler or gets warmer as it goes back to your side?
Exactly. But what if you get in the car and you can tell it's a dual zone? You see, that's critical. If it's a single zone, I'm on board. But what would you guys think if it was a dual zone?
The blend mode doors, possibly in the HVAC box.
Yeah, I would start to think about that. Now, how would you make a determination on which direction to go, though?
Would you try the switches?
You could try to move them. Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. If let's say you move the passenger one and it's quiet and you go to move the driver's one and you hear tick, 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 it'd be like, oh, I think that actuator's messed up. But like, what about if we think that the system may be undercharged? What could give us a quick indication?
Gauges?
Gauges. Yeah. If they're low, then you're like, hey, it's undercharged. But if you check the pressures and the pressures are good, then you might look a little more serious in the actuator if it happens to be a dual zone. All right. So like in this case, performance test showed vent temperatures warmer on the driver's side, both high and low side pressures were normal. See, so if they were both low, we'd be like, hey, this is a low refrigerant situation. But if the high side's normal and the low side's normal, you're like, well, it's not undercharged. So then it'd be like, hey, yeah, let's active test the actuator. Let's check for DTCs. Let's use TechStream and verify position. And you may end up finding a bad actuator. a door that's broken or stuck, you know, like something physically in the HVAC box is going to be your issue. Cool. So I thought that one was really fun. How about, I remember this one. This one's, nobody will get this one, but it's okay. How about AC blows warm in the auto mode, but it's normal in manual? What do you think?
Is that
What's-
kind of similar to where you're saying it could be like a bad resistor or
Thermistor, yeah, the temperature sensor. I'd be all over the temperature sensor. But then again, when you put it in auto, it does tend to look at the solar sensor, the temperature sensor in the cabin. You know, it looks at a number of different things. That's when I'd start to get my mind into like, all right, this computer must be getting a bad input, right? Because when it's in manual mode, it's able to run the compressor, it's able to run the blower motor, it's able to control the doors. All that stuff physically works. The hardware works, but for some reason, when you put it in auto and it starts looking at temperature and sensors, solar and temperature sensors, those must not be giving good info. So I'd look at those. However, this example was much more complex. There was actually customizable mode in TechStream where you could change it from manual to auto. So somebody, this is totally unlikable, but in the customizable settings, somehow somebody put it in manual compressor operation rather than auto. I don't think you'll ever see that one. I like more the temperature and solar sensor better. All right, how about AC blows warm, but it's okay if you're on max? Ooh, that's a tough one. AC blows warm. All right, so you do the test. Vent temperature's warmer than expected. High and low side pressures are normal, so it's not that. It's not undercharge or overcharge. TechStream, you check room temperature sensor circuit. TechStream to verify room temperature sensor circuit. And then you're going to have to compare that to what? How would you know what's good or bad?
you look it up on TIS, right?
I was going to start with my thermometer, which I have. Well, here it is. So if I use my thermometer and the thermometer says 65 on my thermometer, what should it read on live data?
65.
Thereabouts, exactly. And if it doesn't, then that's when we'd a lot of times change over to measuring the actual thermistor and comparing that to what TIS says for a given temperature, right? So you'd be like, oh, it's 65. How many ohms should it have? And then you'd measure it, right? And if the thermistor itself is out of spec, remember I was talking about this with my refrigerator. If the thermistor itself is out of spec, then boom, you're getting a temperature sensor. But if the thermistor is in spec, it's possible you could have resistance in the circuit somewhere if it's reading too low. So that could be like connector, a wire, you know, the terminal type of thing. So yeah, that would be an excellent idea. All right, how about this? Poor cooling. Oh, and by the way, a little review on 8. I did miss a detail. When you put it on max cool, it ignores all the sensor and it just blasts it as cold as possible. Whereas when you take it off of max cool, it's going to try to hit that temperature that's set in auto, kind of. That's the idea. Right. So great. How about poor cooling on hot days and the temperature display is inoperative? Temperature display, what do you think that means? Interesting. All right. How about you check for DTCs, right? Because if the temperature display is inop, it depends on the manufacturer, actually. On GM, if you have an ambient temperature sensor that fails, it says something very interesting where it would normally read the temperature. Like if the temperature right now is 80 and the sensor circuit has an issue, it on a GM, it'll actually say OC. It's like OC, Orange County. No, it's open circuit. They did something different. But with Toyota, a lot of times they'll just put 2 dashes. So if you see 2 dashes, it's more saying like, hey, this something's wrong with this circuit, but it doesn't really know what. Now, remember, that's an input to the automatic HVAC system, automatic climate control. So if you were to check for DTCs, maybe look at the data list, check the ambient temperature sensor, see what it's reading, compare it to known good. And if it's out, then you check the sensor resistance, just like we did with the inside sensor. And maybe it's related to an ambient temperature sensor failure. That could cause this. Cool. All right, one more. This one's a fun one. Does anybody know what a cool box is?
Isn't it on the like old Land Cruisers?
Oh, I need to skip this. There we go. That doesn't look that old.
Console.
Oops. All right. Cool box power. It will literally keep your drinks cool, your beverages, what it's center console fridge. That's exactly right. So let's just say that the cool box was inoperative. We'd have to think about how we're going to diagnose this. Cool box inoperative. What are your thoughts? Got to know a little bit how the system works, don't you?
I mean, I would check the source power to that power button right there first.
Yeah, and I think it depends a little bit on the details, but the important thing to know, there's a couple different ones. So let's go with let's go real quick. I wanted to keep TIS open, and this one is a LX 570, so let's keep that in mind. Oh, I'm under Toyota. I bet you the 600's got it. Cool box. Here we go. This is more like reassembly. I actually want to skim new car features. Description. You know what? This could be good. High performance, lightweight, compact, others. It didn't necessarily specify a whole lot. Construction operation. Good. Gives us the overview. The evaporator. Some PTC heater stuff. Interesting. A lot about this compressor. Okay. It found cool box. Where is it at though? Did it or did it not find it? Where's it at? Huh. Let's just go with box. Oops. Cooling box. Oh, interesting. It's available as an option. Cooling box employs a method of intermittent refrigerant flow control, which regulates the refrigerant flow by switching the magnetic valve on and off for both the front air conditioning and the cooling box evaporators. Oh, interesting. Huh. However, it employs a method of continuous refrigerant flow control. All right. So what this is basically saying, the cooling box has its own evaporator. Same condenser. Look at this. I mean, same compressor. Cool. Same compressor right here going out. One is the condenser. So one condenser, then it Y's off, right? Number 7 is the magnetic valve. When you push that button that Abner saw, you push that button, that's going to open up this valve. It's going to send it to 9, which is the expansion valve for the cool box. And then it's going to go to 5, which is the evaporator. Oh, for the front air unit. Okay. So that valve was actually for the front evaporator. Cool. So I said that wrong. If you press that button, that valve is going to either direct refrigerant to number 8, which is the cool box, or /and number 5, which is the evaporator for the actual AC. Okay. So that valve has the ability to send it in one or the other. So one compressor, one condenser, 2 different evaporators. You know what it's a lot like? Rear AC. Except rather than having rear AC for kids, you have AC just for your beverages. Right. Honestly, you guys are invited for 4th of July. If my wife happens to want to come outside when it's hot outside, don't any of you at all tell her that Lexuses have an inside refrigerator, because next thing you know, my Hummer will be gone and I'll have some Lexus thing, some GX something or other. Now, if Lexus made a GX pickup truck, I'd be down. But if she finds out that these have a standalone evaporator that can keep her matcha cold indefinitely, it's over for me. Do not. Okay. So now that we can learn a little bit about the system, it talks about its own expansion valve and et cetera, and it'll cycle between the two and whatnot. Now we can go back to that potential fault that we had. And we could say, how do we want to diagnose it? Well, now that you know about the system, what are your thoughts? It could be that power button. I agree, because that valve could get messed up. You're right. But what else? But what else? High pressure, low pressure, couldn't that affect it? But the thing is, if it was a compressor, that would take out both, right? If it was a condenser or a fan issue, that would mess up both, right? But this is specifically saying the cool box is not working, and it's implying that the regular AC does work, right? So you just got to understand that. A walkthrough being check the rear AC operation, check the cool box air inlet door position. And in this case, they have a couple different types, but it might just be simply like that valve wasn't opening or that air inlet door. So they did have some cool boxes that were different. That cool box was unique. The one that's written on this question is they literally just ducted the rear AC up to the center console and cold air blew on it. And that was a decent cool box, but the one we saw in the GX was really nice, right? So this was not a great example. It was more like be aware that cool box can work just like rear AC, where it has its own evaporator, or it can work more like backseat AC on like a RAV4, where it doesn't have its own evaporator. It just has ducting that go up under the floor and shoot out of the center console for your rear passengers, kind of like how cooled seats work, right? So they're a little different. All right. Now, if you think you're ready, I just want to make sure that I give you a little prep time, and then I'm going to tell you exactly how you're going to do the stage 2 of diagnosis. So let's run through this one final time. The compressor, remember the compressor sucks in the refrigerant from the low side. It should be a vapor when it pulls it in. It's going to make it into a high pressure, high temperature vapor when it leaves. It's going to go to the condenser, where it's going to condense into liquid. It's going to liquefy it. The condenser fan is going to pull that heat out of there. That liquid refrigerant is going to go to the receiver dryer, which is going to dry it, but also make sure it's all liquid when it goes into the TXV, the expansion valve. The expansion valve is going to fine tune this restriction based on the heat sensing tube. And it's going to allow a certain amount of refrigerant through to balance the temperature, the pressures and temperatures. Because again, this expansion valve in conjunction with the compressor is going to cause evaporation here and condensation here, which we can force by having the correct pressure, right? So the expansion valve is going to do that, but also it's going to allow more refrigerant to flow or less depending on the demand. The blower motor is going to push air through the evaporator, and the evaporator is going to be cold because the refrigerant coming in is a liquid that's evaporating into a vapor, which grabs a lot of heat, packs it into its own molecules, and then carries that heat to the compressor, where it gets discharged to the evaporator, to the condenser, where it condensates and releases the said heat, right? So just remember this system, because we're shifting gears. All right, so right here, I have this pulled up. on Chrome. So here's your guide. This is your appendix. You're allowed to use this for this quiz. I guess I should show you the quiz, huh? So let me jump back to where the quiz is going to be at. You guys are all going to go here. Ready? We're in diagnosis. Look at this ASE simulator questions quiz. Click this. Then you're going to do preview. You're going to do, it's going to ask you question 1, bug 1. But see, it didn't really say much. So what should we be doing there? Well, I'm about to show you. I've actually got to back up one more. Okay, when we get to that quiz, which is on 8. Oh, interesting. Where is the file that I'm looking for? I might have had it in the beginning. The resources. Okay, I'm pretty sure that I have a link in here. Where is this little silly little link? Lecture quiz. Oh, here we go. My fault. 752 simulator instructions and reference. Okay, here we go. So we're going to click on this. You're going to download that. Where that's going to take you is here. When you get to this, and I'll even zoom in right here. Oh, I can't zoom in? That's kind of weird. I don't know, being a little bit weird. You can go over some things like temperature pressure graph. Why that's important, I will show you. Let's just say you check ambient temperature and it's 90 degrees outside. This is for R134A. You'd go to 90, follow this line over, and you'd realize the pressure for R134A static should be about 105. If it's 90 degrees outside, your high and low pressure should be 105 with the compressor off. You haven't even started the car. Cool. That's if it's charged to the right amount. If it's 90 outside and you hook your gauges up, it's only reading 60. It's low. It's undercharged. You're done. That's it. Okay. So keep this in mind. If it's 90 outside and it's 140 on the high and low, it's overcharged. That's it. You're done. Okay. So keep that in mind. This gives you the chart for that. Additionally, this is going to show you when we get in the simulator, it's saying when you turn it on, you're instantly seeing the static pressure. See this 100? It's probably like 105. And this one's like 105. That's your static pressure. You could compare that to this chart to know if you're fully charged or not. Okay. So this is your guide. These are your instructions. You have access. Okay. Then if you want to turn the compressor on, you press this button, press AC. And you can tweak the refrigerant charge on some of them, but not all of them. And you can't really change the ambient temperature, but the ambient temperature should tell you a lot about your pressures. Then you turn the AC on, and what should happen? Well, the low side went down about 25 and the high side went up to about 200. And you can actually see in a moment this compressor will start working. Cool. But wait, there's more tools. If you want, you can get the infrared temperature sensor, the temperature gun, and you can actually check temperature here, 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 here. You can check temperatures all over this whole entire system. And that's going to help you diagnose it, right? But additionally, you can get the tech stream out and you can see just a little bit of live data. Evaporator temperature sensor, regulator pressure sensor, flow sensor, regulator control current. So evaporator temp sensor, that's the thermistor that's on the evaporator. Regulator pressure sensor, that is here. Let's see where it's at. Well, it doesn't exactly show where the pressure sensor is, but that's your refrigerant pressure sensor. That's what it is. The flow sensor is a sensor usually on the compressor. It's going to tell how much refrigerant's flowing, and your regulator control current is because this compressor is variable displacement. And depending on if it's doing full stroke or partial stroke, it's going to change this. All right. That's as much as I could tell you. Cool. And so this is just giving you some of the diagrams. Like you could look at when it heats and when it evaporates and whatnot. A lot of that to me is not super helpful, but same with this. Okay, those items I showed you though, those will be helpful. And then from here, you go to, let me pull Canvas back up again. That was the reference. That was the 752 simulator instructions and reference. Let's back up because the actual test questions are, whoops, I went too far. Too clicky. All right, you better knock it off. Okay, where I meant to go was the simulator worksheets. So when you click on the simulator worksheets, I'll show you what's going to pull up. It's going to look like this. It's going to say, go to this website. All right, so we're going to go to that website, and then we're going to select bug 1. And look at this. It's a 2012 FJ Cruiser repair order. The concern is customer states AC does not work. That sounds about right. That's what they usually say. Conditions, it's 95 outside, ambient temperature. Bright sunshine, 75% relative humidity. And then you're going to say, based on the pressure gauge readings and the system temperatures and all the diagnosis you can do in the simulator, you get to pick 1, 2, 3, or 4. No refrigerant, open coil in the mag clutch relay, inoperative condenser fan, or the system is overcharged. Okay, so pause right there. Okay, here we go. It's going to open up for me. Do you want to do electrical or do you want to do AC? That's what I thought. Here we go. All right. Which one should we be on? Actually, let's start with default. We'll keep it on default for just a moment. All right. What can you tell me about these pressures? Huh. Well, the ambient temperature is 80, and these are like about 88. Yeah, they're about the same. All right. You think 88 degrees is good or bad, or what do you think? Check the reference. Remember that chart? The temperatures, who remembers? What was the temperature?
88.
80 degrees. 80 whole stinking dirty degrees. At 80, which is about right here, if I were to follow this over, we should have 60, 65, 70, 75, 80. No, that's wrong. 60, 70, 80, 90. At 80 degrees, yeah, we should be pretty close to 90. What did we have again? Huh. At 80 degrees, we have pretty close to 90. So guess what? Is it undercharged? Is it overcharged? Is it right correctly charged? Looks pretty good to me, right? It should be about 90 within a couple degrees. I like it. What do you guys want to check next? That's just static. Notice the compressor's not running, right? Let's turn the compressor on. Boom, AC's on. Free sound effects. Our low pressure drops down to 22. Our high pressure's at about 180. Interesting. I don't know. What do you think about those pressures? They might seem low, but it depends. It's only 80 degrees outside. So actually, those are probably pretty good. The way I could check it, though, get the temperature gun and read. What's it blowing here? 43, 42, and 41 at the vents. you know that if you're getting 40, low 40s, that AC is great. You can't fix it because it ain't broken. Okay, then we could measure the evaporator directly. Those are going to be more like 30s. 30 is pretty low, but that's normal. Discharge at 37. We could check it getting ready to go back in the compressor 41. You could check it going into the condenser 142, in the dryer 122, 120, 107 coming out, right? Because it got rid of some of its heat, right? Because that's the job of the condenser. Cool. So you can check it in all these different spots. All right, but let's say we want to check codes or we want to check live data. Evaporator temperature sensor is 41. Does that seem accurate? 41? Well, let's measure it. Well, maybe not that. It depends on where it's at. It's probably right about here. They usually put it on the outlet. So yeah, 41, that's probably fairly close. All right, what about regulator pressure? Sensor is usually the high side pressure. So your high side pressure is what? What would you say that number is? I said 175. This is saying it's 177. That's good. The flow sensor is a little hard to say. Right now, the flow sensor is 245. What happens if we turn this off? Oh, we can't even do the scan tool with it off. So that one probably going to say is good. And that control current 9.929, I think is going to be good. Okay. Sounds like this one's working. All right. Now let's say we jump back to the worksheet. Number one, remember all these concerns? Customer states AC does not work. Okay. But we got to turn on bug one. Bug one. All right. Ambient temperature is 95. Look at our statics. 112 probably. Thereabouts, 110, yeah, a little over that. Yeah, probably 112. All right, I got my ideas made up about whether it's charged or not. I'm gonna turn the AC on. Huh. Hello. Oh, the light is flashing. Interesting. The compressor didn't pump. If I wanted, I could use this temperature, this thermometer. Oh, you know what? It's blowing 95. It's blowing ambient. Everything is ambient. Everything is ambient because the compressor's not running. I could check codes and be like, huh, evaporator temperature sensor says 95. That makes sense because it was about 95. Okay. Regulator sensor, it's about 114 PSI. That makes sense to me because it looks like it's about 114. I don't know. This one's a tough one, huh? So what do you guys think? Do you remember the options? Let's review. No refrigerant. What do you think about no refrigerant as a possibility? We're going to do one together and this is it. Then you're on your own. No refrigerant in the system. What do you think? Yay, nay?
Oh, no.
Why not?
Because it's holding pressure.
Yeah, we got pressure in there. If there's no refrigerant, these are going to be closer to 0. Or at least severely under, right? We could look at our temperature pressure chart here and be like, hey, it's 95. 95 is like about right here. Boom, boom. You go over. Oh yeah, that should have like 110 or more PSI. And on the simulator, we had definitely a little more than 110. And we can verify that by the sensor too, 114. So the refrigerant looks really good, I think. All right, how about, I'm going to skip to, how about 4, because we're talking about refrigerant charge. Is it undercharged? Is it overcharged? What did you think about the overcharge?
I don't think it's overcharged because it's reading normal temps.
Yeah, exactly. If it's 95, it should be about 110, 112. If it was overcharged, it might be reading 140, 150, 160, right? So based on those two, I'm going to say no to 1 and no to 4. Now we're between 2 and 3. Somebody take the lead on what their thoughts are.
I think it's gonna be 2
Yeah, how come?
because the AC light's flashing. So, like you said before, it's gonna be likely an open circuit in the AC circuit, and then on the scan tool, I think the regular control current is zero amps. So
It's not even trying to do anything. Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, What if it was what if it was a condenser? A condenser fan? What would I see over here if the fan was in op?
Wouldn't you see that heating up more?
Heating up, which would make the pressure what?
Increase more pressure.
Yeah, so see, our static pressures are fine. Our high pressure is not too high. I mean, if it was an issue with the condenser fan, your high side would be really high, especially when your compressor kicked on. Your high would be through the roof pressure wise because your temperature would be through the roof, right? So, you know what I would say? I agree with you on number 2. I would absolutely go with an open coil in the magnetic clutch relay. That would make the compressor not work. That would make the green light not flash. That would make all these ambient pressures and ambient temperatures because nothing's pumping. The AC is not really on. So what do I do with this though? I mean, I feel so good about it. I feel so confident. What should I do about that though? Oh, I know. Well, I should go in the quiz. I'm going to preview this because I'm going to pretend I'm you. And I'm going to say option 2, right? Because this is not question 1. And then I'm going to say next. And I'm going to go to question 2. And you know what I'm going to do? You can only guess. I'm going to go to this. I'm going to go to bug 2. It's going to say, oh, it's a 2013 Highlander with these conditions and blah, 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 blah. And I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to go back to here and I'm going to put on bug 2. And be like, oh, those are the pressures. Those are the temperatures. Turn on the AC. There you go. Dun, 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 dun. And I'm going to drop and I'm going to check and I'm going to measure and I'm going to whatever. And the rest of this is what you guys are going to be doing today. And I'm okay if you do them together, but you need to get your own thoughts so you can start thinking about your own diagnosis. Okay. You need to be ready for this ASE. All right. Does that sound fun? You guys think you can do that? Can you do it? Can you do it though? Can you do it? All right, that's it. If you guys got questions, ask me. Otherwise, I have the write-ups for every single fault done. So I'm going to give you guys the link to that. Don't look at the answers. Do not just look at the answers. You're going to ruin your really good learning opportunity. Do all the learning, reference it, take your time. It's open book, get them all right. There's no Kahoot. It's this. This is the ticket here. Okay. So your quiz, your lecture quiz is this, and your part 2 is this. Then after you're done, I'm not going to give you the answers live. I'm going to link you the video to the answers. I walk through every single question. Cool.